Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tom Woods, and today we'll be giving our review on The Legend of Tarzan, not to get confused with the 2001 straight-to-TV animated series based on the Disney film Tarzan. This, unfortunately, is the far less superior recent release, directed by David Yates, starring Alexander Skarsgård, Samuel Jackson, Margot Robbie, and Christoph Waltz. This one, it's an interesting experience. Like, when I've been doing my reactions and I'm seeing all these trailers for upcoming films, you tend to see trailers and part of you just knows that it's going to be a flop. Part of you knows that it's going to fail just based on how the trailer looks and everything. And this was, if I'm going to give my thoughts before going in, that was basically my impressions before seeing this one. I wasn't hyped at all. I didn't think there was any hope for this movie, really. I mean, Tarzan, there's been so many versions of Tarzan over the year. I mean, I can't remember when the original film came out, but it goes way, way back based on the original book. I think it's called Tarzan the Ape Man is the original novel. We've had the Disney one, and now we get this one. A new version of Tarzan has been planned for ages, and I think that they first announced that David Yates was going to be the director in this one around 2012. So, I mean, this whole thing's been talked about for ages, and we finally get it now. So, what was sort of your thoughts before going in and sort of general impressions on this one? Because it's going to be interesting to talk about.
My thoughts going into this were I'm a big fan of most of the actors in it, especially Christoph Waltz, Sam Jackson, and also Alexander Skarsgård. I think's really good. Initial impressions. If you're expecting the soothing sound of Phil Collins, you will be extremely disappointed. And you mentioned earlier the Tarzan direct-to-TV series, which is far superior in all aspects than this film's 2-hour runtime. I mean, this kind of becoming a theme where, like, it was in Me Before You, I was quite bored. In this, I was quite bored as well. To be honest, I don't think it made any sense whatsoever. And the political background of it kind of... it's a touchy subject, and I don't think it should... it's a very cheerful, swashbuckling adventure. And the background, I think, kind of ruins that, because you're just going, well, this is to do with slavery and everything, and like the Belgians in Congo was absolutely awful, and I don't think it suits the idea of a swashbuckling Tarzan movie, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, well, I was sort of reading a bit behind the scenes of this one, and originally, like, back in 2008, they were doing different scripts and things like that, and they wanted one that resembled Pirates of the Caribbean, so it's interesting that you talk about the whole swashbuckly kind of style of it, and there are elements of that in here, especially towards the end of the film. I should say this as well, as always, we'll do spoiler-free at the beginning, and we'll warn you when we get into spoilers, so we won't give anything away just yet. But there are elements of that, and I don't know, the tone of this one was just fucking dour, like, the whole way through it. And there are moments where they try and have some levity and jokes, but they just feel massively out of place, considering the rest of the tone of the movie is very dark, it's very serious. You look at the colour palette of the film as well, and it's just so dark and miserable. There's just no vibrant colours or anything to the film. And to be honest, I think if we sort of drift into the acting and everything in it now, with the exceptions of maybe Samuel Jackson, who looks like he's the only one in this film having any kind of fun, Alexander Skarsgård, I thought was just terrible. Everyone is just so flat, and that's kind of how I felt with the movie and my general thoughts on the movie. It's a flat viewing experience.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that. I think Alexander Skarsgård isn't great in it.
No charisma at all.
No
from your lead character.
I think what I I was really looking forward to Sam. I think he kind of was a bit irritating for me, a bit too much, and there was too much of him. I did quite like Christoph Waltz in it, but he's just playing the standard Christoph Waltz character.
Yeah.
And also Margot Robbie was the sort of spunky sidekick, as it were, or girlfriend, and she was alright in it, I thought. But she had some jokes that just came out of nowhere, and like you thought, what?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, this is what I'm saying, like, in terms of the cast, like, you have some great talent here. I mean, I've never seen Alexander Skarsgård in anything before. And if you go in with that very silent, stoic representation of Tarzan, I guess it works. But as a lead, it's just, he's so uncharismatic, he's so unlikable, there's nothing to him, so there's nothing to get attached to. And Margot Robbie, who I loved in Wolf of Wall Street, and I am really, really looking forward to seeing her portrayal of Harley Quinn in the upcoming Suicide Squad film. She just had nothing to work with in this film. She really did. And also, can I say, it was really strange that Jane was American. Like, my only point of reference is the Disney version of Tarzan, but I was under the impression because they came from London, they were English. So I was expecting a British accent. And then as soon as she started with an American accent, I was like, oh, okay, this is really quite bizarre. It was strange, and there was just nothing much to her character. In terms of like a comic relief sidekick character, I think Samuel Jackson played it well. And as I said, it looks like he's the only one who's having any kind of fun with it. And man, I love Christoph Waltz. I do. I think he's a great actor, but you know, I've seen him in Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained, Spectre, and now this, and he does always play the same character. I mean, this is the Hans Lander. This is, you know, just every character he's ever played before, your Blofeld, everything like that. But he plays it well. You can tell that he's just doing this for the paycheck, though. He's completely phoning in this performance, and a lot of the actors are in this one as well.
Yeah.
He really was. There's a scene later on in the film, which I'll probably go into in spoilers, but he's basically playing, what's his name? From Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Belloc character.
Yes, actually, that's a good... Yeah.
There's a scene involving him and Jane in the film where they have this dialogue together, and it's more or less exactly that scene with Belloc and Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're both drinking in that scene in Indiana Jones.
I didn't quite pick up on that, but that's a good comparison. I think that it didn't work. None of the relationships felt real either between your two leads, and it was just like so bland and boring. It was like watching Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
That's exactly what it was like. Yeah, absolutely. And the whole sort of romance is just based on, oh, he looks attractive, oh, she looks attractive. And I know that's a trope in Tarzan, like they have that initial attraction, but it's more that curiosity, I think, with Tarzan, because he has grown up alongside gorillas all of his life, and now he sees this person who is kind of like him, the same species, but is curious, and then their love builds from there. And I don't know if this film says exactly how many years it's been since he's been out of the jungle and he's become quote-unquote civilized in London with Jane. But you're right, it's just, they just look at it, they'll like kiss or like make out or something, and it's like, oh, they're in love, and it's just like, ugh. Now, also a thing that I really disliked about this movie with Margot Robbie character is that you can tell that they've got this whole entire subtext underneath it. It was like, we can't make her be a damsel in distress. And I think she says that in the film. She says, like, I'm no damsel. You can't say that and then proceed to have every other Jane scene be where she's kept hostage by the villain.
Yeah.
And has to be rescued by Tarzan at the end of the film. You can't do that.
It is very superhero-esque, where the girlfriend gets kidnapped. It's like the bit at the end of Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man film. Yeah. It's like, which do you choose? Your girlfriend or all these slaves?
was that in Spider-Man? I missed that part.
No, but...
I know, yeah, I get what you mean. I was going to say, that'd be a really, really interesting twist at the end of Spider-Man.
Like, she always gets captured throughout most of the movie, and I thought we were past the whole damsel in distress thing. I thought that the trope had kind of gone away. Maybe I was completely wrong, but it's something that we've seen before, and we just in the hands of a better writer, I think the script lets it down. I think really, really badly. I think in the hands of that character could have been something more than just she gets kidnapped and Tarzan has to go guerrilla style save her.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
Oh no, sorry. There you go. Go ahead. My point was that it could have been more than it was.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the script writers here. One of them doesn't have a Wikipedia credit. That's Adam Kozad, and then Craig Brewer is the one that has a credit. And I'm looking at his stuff. Not really anything else. Oh, I've seen Black Snake Moan, which is a Samuel Jackson movie, which is actually kind of enjoyable, but nothing of note. He's done a bit of TV work. He was a producer on Katy Perry Part of Me, and a co-writer and / director on the 2011 remake of Footloose, and that's about it. But you're right, the script is terrible, and I saw this with a fair crowd at the cinema. Considering the time I went to see it, that was surprising. I thought I was going to be the only one in there, but there was a fair few in there. And there's a moment with a really, really out-of-place joke from Samuel Jackson about halfway through this movie. But the audience were loving it, and I don't know whether they were just zoning in on that moment because this movie is pretty much humorless all the way through. But it was strange. It just seemed like wildly inconsistent. It felt like a film to me that didn't know what it wanted to be. It was trying to balance all these tones and all these styles, and it just didn't work for me. And it's a shame because I think that with like today's technology and things like that, I think you could do a decent modern remake of Tarzan. I mean, obviously still set it in the time it's meant to be set, but I think that under the right director with the right script, I think you can make it work. I think it's tough to make it work, but because it is kind of a really out there premise. But I think you can do it, and that's what I'm really let down by this, actually. I mean, it was directed by David Yates, who I think is a good director. I think he's a solid director. He's most famous for directing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and the final 2 Deathly Hallows films. And he's all set to, it's coming out at the end of this year, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. This one, it really didn't feel like his style. It didn't feel like anyone was invested in this film, from the crew to the director and the cast. And I know that's not the case because I don't think anyone in the production team goes into it wanting to make a bad movie. But it just felt so there was no oomph behind it. There was no narrative drive or anything like that. I don't know if it was too cliched with the plot, because I mean, ultimately, I should probably read the plot actually. IMDb has it written out. Tarzan, having acclimatized to the life in London, is called back to his former home in the jungle to investigate the activities at a mining encampment. So you do have your villain, you do have a villain's motive, which is to get diamonds, and then it's really just a try and save Jane movie. Yeah. And there's just really, with a plot like that, if you had engaging characters, if you had a good script, that would be fine. That would be enough, because you'd have enough to reinforce that. But I don't think there is. Whether it be, there's no visual just quality or stunningness in terms of the direction or the cinematography. The writing's bad. The performances are just dull. So all these parts don't form any kind of enjoyable viewing experience in this film at all.
No, it really doesn't. Sort of halfway through, I just thought it was going really bland and boring, and there was one bit in it which I'll get into more in spoilers, where there's a very, very like jarring cut in it that really took me out of what was a bland and boring film. But some of the editing is really, it's not cohesive. It's very janky and all over the place in its editing. One thing I will say is that I did like one thing I did like about it was the when Tarzan's parents were killed.
Yeah,
I thought that was a good scene, and I liked how it looked visually, and there were some very nice landscapes in it as well. Also, a lot like I thought judging from the trailers, it would be absolute like a visual effects fest.
Yeah.
There was a lot less than I thought. It was riddled with it, but the trailers made it look like it was absolutely everything was going to be CGI.
And I mean, no, not everything was CGI. There was definitely a lot of it, and I'm going to get into the CGI in just a minute. But, there were some sets and props that were built, but I do think that this film still had way too much overuse of CGI in it. I'm just looking at here. It says principal photography on the film was in Hertfordshire. I think they filmed most of it in England, except for 6 weeks in Gabon filming background without the cast. But there's just so much of this film to me that just seems like they're on a green screen. And there's always that disconnect to me. And if we're going to get into I'm not getting into recommendation now, but I think the big proponent of this film based on the trailers was the action. And I think they were really trying to just action up Tarzan. And if you're going into it from that perspective, to me, the action was just littered with shaky cam again. I found it very, very difficult to pinpoint what was going on. The fist fights in it were filmed in this really awkward... I don't know if they slowed down the shutter speed or what they did, but they added this slow motion into it, and it just looked weird. It didn't really fit the tone of the movie. Towards the very start, where some guy gets ambushed by one of the soldiers, they just snap to a slow motion shot, and it almost felt like I was watching 300. It just didn't fit that tone of the movie for me. But let's talk about the CGI, because I talked about these in my reactions, and when I was watching these trailers in my reactions, I thought, the CGI really, really isn't up to much here, but maybe that's because we're so many months or like a year before this film comes out. Maybe they're going to have time to tweak it, because that often happens with trailers. I mean, if we look at the Hobbit films, if you watch the trailers for that, they definitely do improve the CGI when it gets to the final product, even with Jurassic World as well.
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't look like they've improved the CGI one iota. I have seen CGI from the early 90s that looks better than this. It doesn't look finished. It really, really doesn't look polished. Again, I'm not going into spoilers, but there's a scene involving a train where they need to swing on top of a train, and it looks like a video game. In fact, I've seen video games that look better. It looks absolutely awful, and it's downright laughable that with a film that has a budget of $180 million, which is insane. I mean, there's a lot of films that come out. Probably the biggest one I've seen of this was Superman Returns, where you see how much budget it had, and you can't see the money on screen. You don't know where this money went to. And they even say, like here on Wikipedia, like behind the scenes, that if they had have filmed in Africa, the budget would have been even more, which is just ridiculous. Like, I don't know where this budget went to. I mean, clearly a lot of it went to the visual effects, but man, the visual effects are terrible. And in a film that's so littered with them, with you've got the gorillas that are CGI, you've got a lot of the backdrops, all of the animals are CGI. It just looks terrible. And we've seen films now, I mean, Peter Jackson's King Kong, for example, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. We have seen what technology and what we can do now with visual effects to make these things look as lifelike as possible. And there were some scenes with these gorillas in the film that looked like I was watching Beast Wars on TV again. In all honesty, they just didn't feel real. There was never a moment where I felt like anything was real. It looked like some things didn't have textures on them. It was bad. And the only thing I can kind of stick up for in some scenes were, I don't mind seeing a heightened Tarzan where he's doing all these crazy things, because we know that no one could swing through vines in trees that fast. We know that's physically impossible. But I mean, I said earlier, I love the 1998, I think it was, the Disney film. And he does all crazy things there, really visually inventive ways he slides down the branches and the vines and everything like that. So I'm used to that with Tarzan, and I don't mind seeing that. But it was just some scenes where everyone else is doing it too. It just really took me out of the movie, and it just looked abysmal. It looked like we were going back to sort of the Scorpion King CGI from Mummy Returns.
No, that's yeah, I will completely agree with that. I mean, you've pretty much said everything I was going to about all the visual effects in it. They aren't the greatest, and I really didn't know it had $180 million budget.
It's insane, isn't it?
Just,
and so far it's only grossed like 80 million as well. So it clearly will make its budget back, I think, maybe. Although I don't even think this has gone like number one at the box office. I think this has stayed at number 2 underneath Finding Dory in the US. It'll be interesting to see what it does in the UK, but I mean, with July, we've got so many big films coming out with BFG, Star Trek, Finding Dory for us in the UK. I don't think this film's going to have any kind of staying power.
No, it really isn't. And, I mean, do you want to get on to positives and negatives? If you can...
yeah, sure. Do you want to go first on this one? Because I've been talking way too much on this one.
Yeah.
If you want to give your opinions first.
My positives and negatives. Some of it was visually interesting, but that was like in the first few minutes, and some of the flashbacks were quite good. Like I mentioned, don't think it's really a spoiler, is it?
No,
because it happens if you haven't seen the 1998 movie, then what are you doing with your life? But yeah, I thought that scene was really intense and probably the most memorable thing about the film. I liked Margot Robbie in it, sort of. Christoph Waltz I thought was good, but he was just playing Christoph Waltz. And CGI was awful. The script needed a lot of rewrites. I think it needed actual people who could write characters. I think it needed a better plot as well, because what turns into quite a political background actually just turns into like me Tarzan, me save Jane sort of story, and it takes so long to actually get to anything that even resembles interesting. The beginning is so terribly long. Yeah, I really can't recommend this at all.
Yeah, no, for me, I'm trying to think. Actually trying to think of a positive. I guess I'll go with, as you said, like Christoph Waltz, Samuel Jackson, Jimon Honsu as well. I mean, he's a great actor. Motherfucker doesn't age. I swear to God, like he has remained youthful for like the last 20 years. They do the best with what they can, but I just think that negative-wise, your two main characters who should be the most charismatic, and these are the two characters that you are following through this entire movie, they're just so uncharismatic. They have zero chemistry with each other. Part of that, most of that is down to the actual performance, but a lot of it is down to the script. I do think it is a very weak story, and I think that based on that, I think you could get away with like a 90-minute runtime in this film, because it is a very just standard story.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Maybe we could have had something a bit more involved, and that's what I thought we were going to get with how it starts off, and they're bringing all this historical context into it and everything like that. We get a very, very, very long opening credit scene to kind of lay the stage, and I was kind of there like, is this just going to be all text all the way through? Show don't tell please movie. But yeah, it was just a really just boring, miserable experience of a film, and it's such a shame because I hate going to the cinema and seeing a bad movie, and I don't want to hate a movie when I go there. There's always, we mentioned this in our Me Before You, there's always that hope that it can surprise you, because that has happened to me with films in the past, and I just think that 2016 so far, especially the summer movie season, has been really, really awful. Pretty much with everything I've seen, or very, very underwhelming. I'm hoping that some of the movies that come out at the end of this month kind of make up for it. I always remain hopeful in that way. So negatives, it's just a really forgettable movie, and I can't really go out of my way to recommend anyone seeing this film. There's just nothing to it. There's nothing to get invested in. There's no kind of message or meaning to it. It's kind of just a boring, forgettable adventure flick. If you are curious, if you are a Tarzan fan, I'd say either just check out the Disney movie of Tarzan or some of the older Tarzan movies, or just wait until, it hits like Netflix or comes out very, very cheap on DVD, because it's not worth paying to see it on the big screen. So that'll do it for our spoiler-free section. So now let's get into spoilers. I don't really know how many spoilers we're going to be talking about in this one. Do you want to talk about the flashbacks a bit at the beginning?
Yeah,
and we'll sort of go from there and have a general discussion.
I think, like I said, the death scene of Tarzan's parents dying is actually the most interesting thing about it. It glosses over so much of the backstory, which I think they did because they didn't want it just to be an origin story. But my question is, I want to know how he got back to England, who took him back, what even happened in that instance. And I think the more interesting stuff was the stuff you didn't see with Jimon Honsu's son, that where Tarzan kills it in the flashback. I wanted to see more of that, more of his time in the jungle, not him going back and telling us how much fun he had.
Yeah, no, I will absolutely agree with that. And I'm just sort of checking through the books. I don't know if the character was created first or if the book came first. The original book, Tarzan of the Apes, came out in 1912, and I'm just having a look now to see if it does pick up from London, because I remember reading the synopsis of this movie and I was immediately taken aback that, we're starting off in London and he goes back to the jungle. I thought this could be kind of interesting, but all the Tarzan things I've seen immediately start with him in the jungle.
Yeah.
And then usually end where he makes the decision either to go to London or he remains in the jungle. They're the only ones I've seen. I haven't read the books. I know we've had a couple of commenters on my reactions who have read the books, so maybe they can bring that to more light in the comments. But I want to go back to your point, what you mentioned earlier about the editing. And to me, if I'm going to compare this to a movie in terms of its structure, it felt very much like Man of Steel to me, where, as you said, it really doesn't want to be an origin story. So you get these really awkward flashbacks that really don't have any rhyme or reason to be there. There's no kind of Lost style flashback where it has some kind of thematic reasoning to be at that point. There's no part where it mirrors anything that's happened before. They're just sort of awkwardly thrown in.
I mean, and it's not a Christopher Nolan Batman film. Like Batman Begins, all the flashbacks were thematic in presentation as well, and I think it tries to do a similar thing but just doesn't work.
Yeah, and absolutely, Batman Begins is my favourite one of Nolan's Batman films, and even the flashbacks are told in a non-linear order, but it completely works for that movie. It feels like you're watching a comic book in terms of its structure and how it's laid out. In this, I would have just preferred the first 20-30 minutes, just give me a Tarzan origin story. Yeah. Let's open with him in the jungle, boom, then you can flash back to however many years it was after with the London and then coming back to the jungle. It just feels really out of place, and some of my favourite bits in this movie probably were some of the origin stuff. I liked the scene that we get in the trailer with it was kind of weird in this movie because I'm used to the Disney one where, is it Sabor the leopard, where that is the one that kills his parents. In this, it was just the gorillas go insane.
Yeah.
Although they don't call them gorillas in this, do they? Because these ones are swinging through the trees. They do give them a name. They have a special name. We can't call them gorillas because they're a certain type of ape or something like that. But they are
silverback gorillas, I think.
Yeah, I know. I think it's a subspecies or something they call them in this film. It's a really, really quick name drop, and I was like, oh, okay, that explains it. But they are evil, and they just kill Tarzan's parents, just probably rip them apart and eat them, God knows what. And we do get that nice scene where Carla, the mother gorilla, does approach the crib and looks in, and those were the moments where I felt okay, this is a guy with a vision here that is trying to do something with this film. and then we'll snap cut back to boring London with uninteresting characters, and it felt like Peter Jackson's King Kong, where you just want to get to the jungle, you want to see things happen, but we're stuck in just mundane boringness with horrendous characters who we don't give a shit about. And that was really my problem, really. So I definitely picked up on the editing, and it wasn't just the stuff with the flashbacks as well. There were some scenes where Jane would have a conversation with Tarzan, and it'd be like a quick 20-second scene and then cut to something else. And I always think when I watch a scene like that, either something was cut or what was the point of that, because it just disrupts the flow. And a film that's well edited, you shouldn't even notice the edits. It should just all seem flowing and naturalistic, and there are a lot of times in this film where I didn't get that.
I agree.
Can we talk about Christoph Waltz a bit more in this movie? Unless you have something to talk about the flashbacks and the editing.
No, I wasn't going to talk about the flashback. I was just going to jump forward.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely think that there's a big, enormous gorilla fight in it. That is that Tarzan fights an ape.
Yeah. It's like it's a expression of dominance, isn't it? Like who the alpha male is of the tribe. And I kind of like the setup, actually, although we get nothing in flashbacks of it, really, where he says that this gorilla, used to be my brother, and now he's the leader of the pack, he's the leader of the, what is it, like I can't remember what the group terminology is for gorillas, the family of gorillas, and Tarzan approaches. He's been gone for so many years, and he says, this gorilla is going to see me as a deserter and as a threat. I mean, and that initial setup was pretty cool, but what follows is just, oh my god, so ridiculous.
He should be dead.
Yeah.
Instantly. Just killed. Ripped apart.
And even if we go with the idea that, Tarzan is a heightened guy, this is sort of a heightened world and character to a regular human. We see his CGI hand earlier in the film with his new bone structure, and I was just like, do we really need to CGI that? But this fight could have been cool, and that was actually one of my favourite shots in the trailer, was where they have that slow-mo jump through the air as they're both gearing up for a punch, as is about to like safari punch this gorilla in the face. But this gorilla's like just pounding on this guy's back, which would shatter every single bone in his vertebra. You would be in pieces. Your entire skeletal structure would be shattered. And it's not just one of these punches, it's about a series of like 3 or 4. He's thrown against trees, he's beaten on, he's bitten. All of this stuff. And do they show earlier in the film that he fought a gorilla before and he'd basically just got absolutely decimated and all his bones were broken and he's in a sling and just like a body cast or something like that?
Yeah,
I believe they do that. They do it twice, don't they, in the film? I can't remember if that was when he was little or something like that.
No, it was when he first meets Jane. They show a flashback of him in a hospital bed after getting absolutely destroyed. In exactly the same way. I don't care how, like, if you're an ape man, how strong your bones are, you're dead.
And another one of my favourite shots as well in the trailer, but for some reason when you see it on the big screen it's just a mess of shaky cam, was the scene where the gorilla chases Tarzan down from the top of the tree, and it's like this one shot as it's winding round the tree trunk as they, hit the ground in the forest. There could have been a lot of opportunities for some really cool shots in this fight, but unfortunately it's all mired in very, very close shaky cam shots and you can't really make out anything. But the stuff you can make out is just so ridiculous that there's no tension to anything, because when a character can withstand just a horrible, horrific beating from a gorilla and just shrug it off and he's fine, because he is immediately fine after that, isn't it? He's just joking around with Samuel Jackson, and there's like a really awkward, out of place lick your nuts joke. Which, that was the joke that got the biggest laugh.
Some of the humour was really awful, especially one of the jokes I found really just dumb was where Margot Robbie says to Christoph Waltz, "Oh, one side of your moustache is longer than the other." What?
No, that was just dead air. That was absolutely dead air in the cinema. And you could kind of see what she was trying to do. She was trying to break it down and just make it question herself. But it was just so out of place. And that's what all the jokes were in this. And even Samuel Jackson's lick your nuts joke has a payoff at the end of the movie, where he says like, "Were you really gonna lick that gorilla's nuts?" And he was like, "No." "Oh well, it looked like you were about to." And then that's paid off at the end of the movie when he says, "Were you gonna give me a hug?" "It looked like you were about to." I'm like,
Ooh,
really?
Yeah, what a payoff.
Great, wonderful, just inspired writing there. I'm trying to even think what else to talk about. Okay, I've been really negative on this film. I will say that probably the bit I was really just genuinely into this movie and where I was smiling and I was getting a sense of character was where Jane and Tarzan first head back to Africa, and there's a scene where he meets a group of lions, which was probably the best bit of CGI in the whole movie.
It was
and
laughable. Completely laughable.
I kind of like that where he says he grew up with the cubs, though. That was cool.
Alexander Skarsgård are rubbing heads with CGI lions, and you just think behind the scenes he's probably rubbing heads with a bit of green shit on the end of a stick.
I don't know, because I mean he's kind of like Dr. Dolittle, really, isn't he? He just talks with the animals, so that made sense to me.
It's a visual moment that I just think it was so funny. I actually found that funnier than most of the jokes in the movie.
But then sort of what leads after that, and the point that I was coming on to, I did like that lion bit though, but the bit where I was coming on to was where they make it back to the village, and I actually thought they played that very, very well, where Jane had grew up there before and all the tribe are laughing, they're singing, they're dancing, and that felt very genuine to me and nice. It was clearly all done just for the reason that Christoph Waltz can rock up later in the movie and just shoot them all in the head and just burn their village to the ground to give us some kind of dramatic tension. But I thought that bit was nice. We get some like genuine, nice human moments between the tribe and Tarzan and Jane. I'm trying to think if we have anything else to say about Christoph Waltz. It's just, you know what? This is set in the Congo, right?
Yeah.
Just watch Congo. It's
Tim Curry, and it's funnier.
Yeah, it's a bad movie.
And they're also looking for diamonds, aren't they?
Exactly. And we have feral gorillas in it that are just horrible in it. So if you're gonna watch a movie set in the same location, just watch Congo, man. Either watch Disney's Tarzan or watch Congo. And we arrive at the end in. Oh, actually, I want to talk about something. I don't know if you picked up on this as well. I might have missed something. So when Jane's on this steamboat and they're taking her hostage because they need to capture Tarzan, so they try to use her as bait to lure him there. They've got one of Jane's friends there who's one of the warriors from the tribe in a cage, and they keep threatening to dunk him in the water to drown him. And they do, and Jane jumps in after him, and the very next shot they're both swimming outside of the cage.
Yeah.
Did I miss something? Did she nab some keys off someone?
Yeah,
to unlock the cage? Did he like T-1000 style phase through the bottom of the cage? Because there was a floor on that cage, so he's not getting out of that thing unless you've got keys and like a padlock on top of it. So, and then there's like a hippo chase just straight after that. It felt like I missed something there.
Which has also paid off. Which is the hippo thing's paid off because she asked some bunch of kids, "Oh, what's the most dangerous animal in Africa?" The hippo.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's obviously not gonna be something later on in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was surprised that we had no elephants come back up again in the film, because we get a moment with that as well.
Yeah.
There's just nothing real in this film. All the animals are CGI. We get like a Lion King style stampede at the end of the film. And then the whole entire ending is just massively overblown, where this whole thing's crumbling and it's a ticking time bomb because the ship's about to explode, and there was no grit to it. In a film like this, I think you need that. If you look to like the original Indiana Jones films, like all those films are PGs, but there is gore to them. There's that moment in Raiders of the Lost Ark where he's having that fist fight with that guy, and he gets pushed into the propeller, and we get the blood splattered. There, people get crushed in Temple of Doom. Stuff happens, and there's grit to the deaths. In this, we get a scene where Christoph Waltz gets eaten by crocodiles, and you could just tell that they edited the hell out of that scene to keep it to a PG rating.
It was.
Or was it a 12? I can't remember.
It was 12A. It was very overblown, and like it was very James Bond at the end as well.
Yeah.
And everything's kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow and ready for sequels.
I will say, though, it didn't sequel bait as much as I thought it would. There's really nothing to... Like, this could be its own thing, and I really don't think this is going to get a sequel anytime soon. We'll get another reboot probably in about 5 or 10 years' time. I don't know, it kind of wrapped up, and honestly, the best part of the film for me was the credits song. I'm a big Hosier fan. And the song itself doesn't really have any bearing to the film at all. The music video is kind of really awkward as well, because you've got the lead singer playing the piano, and then it just intermingles really awkward shots from this movie into it just to justify it being a song for that film. But that's really all I can say about it. This was a really tough review to do, actually, because there's just nothing really tangible for me to be invested in. I wasn't hyped from the trailers, and that kind of lasted throughout the entire movie for me. And it's a shame, because I feel like the last couple of movies we've been to have all been really underwhelming. I mean, I found Conjuring 2 entertaining, I'll agree, but I mean, I agreed with all of your negatives on that. And next week, we've got the joyous occasion of Ghostbusters, which me and you will be at that one. I think at least Tate will be at that one as well. We probably won't be on the actual review, but we are going to see that film drunk, I believe. I think we've made that pact because we need to help us get through that movie somehow. I've pretty much said everything on Tarzan.
So
do you have any other final thoughts?
Nothing from me except don't go and see it.
Legend of Tarzan
on something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Legend of Tarzan, 0 stars. Needed more Phil Collins. That'll be my final thoughts on the movie. So that'll do it for our review on The Legend of Tarzan. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of the film. What's your favourite Tarzan movie, and anything else you like. I'm really struggling to think of anything else to talk about this movie. What's your favourite Christoph Waltz performance? There we go, let's go for that one.
Yeah.
In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we've got a lot more reviews coming out. Some point next week we'll have a review, me and you on this one, on the original 2 Ghostbusters movies.
Yep.
The far superior ones. That's going to be fun talking about those, and it also gives me an excuse to watch those films again, because I absolutely love them, and it's been way too long since I last watched them. So expect that review. We'll have Ghostbusters sometime next week, which should be our most funny review on the channel, I would say. That's going to be amazing to talk about. And then at the end of the month, we'll have BFG, Finding Dory, and Star Trek Beyond, as well as a whole bunch of other ones as well. So please do hit that subscribe button. A lot more content coming out now. We just had our show last night, Battle of the Brackets, which is a new series we started, which was a lot of fun to do. Please check that out as well. There'll be reactions from me. Timestamp 0 will be happening at the end of this month on the 31st, I believe. You can find the link to get voting on that in the straw poll link in the description below. I haven't checked it for a while, but last time I think there was slightly a walkaway winner, but it is still all to play for. Please get voting on that and decide which film we'll be watching as a commentary for Timestamp. And yeah, that'll do it. So until the next video, we'll see you guys next time.